Lauren was pivoting his torso to face the Novacat when suddenly another mech moved between them. It was one of the largest Omnimechs ever built, the 100-ton Direwolf, its incredible bulk pitted and scarred from the fighting. 3 nearby elementals opened fire on the Direwolf, but only seemed to anger it as their missiles tore hopelessly at its thick armor hide. While continuing to face Satin West's position, it moved its arm to the side and fired a blast at the Novacat elementals, driving them to their death or cover. A voice came over the speakers. "Satin West, I am Devin Osis," the Direwolf signaled. "Prepare to meet the Kerenskys." In a universe where bigger is not always better, the Direwolf seeks to test that theory. When the 100-ton monster of a battlemech was still under design, it was envisioned as the, quote, ultimate assault omnimech. Just short of stepping into the domain of the super heavy battlemech class, one would be hard-pressed to find a battlemech that could bring more weaponry to bear on an enemy than the Direwolf. The story of this mech touches upon interclan politics, some famous and infamous mech warriors, and demonstrates the immutable truth that so many problems in the inner sphere can be sorted out with the proper application of overwhelming force. So let's get started. Of the original 3050 Omnimechs that terrorized the defenders of the Free Rosselhog Republic and the Draconis Combine in the earliest days of the clan invasion, only the Direwolf could lay claim to the 100-ton crown. Its story actually began 4 decades earlier when Science cast members from within Clan Wolf decided they would create an Omnimech that could rule the battlefield. It would sacrifice speed for a prolific amount of weaponry that was intended to end any disagreement quickly. Unfortunately, the Direwolf's first fight would take place before its first steps off an assembly line. When Clan Smoke Jaguar warriors were informed of the project's existence, they acted quickly, seeking to leapfrog toward battlefield supremacy in the most clan-like way possible. Of course, I'm referring to loudly declaring your intent to take it by force. Of course, we're going to make it official with the much more diplomatic-sounding language of a trial of possession. As history records it, the Smoke Jaguars won, though Clan Wolf was quick to point out that the Jaguars had, quote, danced on the boundaries of Zelbruggen. Now, without additional information on what exactly happened, this sounds like the clanner equivalent of sour grapes. Protein paste about to turn, perhaps? Maybe it's just my bias as a Jade Falcon, but I can just picture the Smoke Jaguars carrying off the blueprints to the Direwolf while some Clan Wolf warrior stomps his foot like a 12-year-old neighborhood whiner, crying about how the cul-de-sac pick-a-ball game was unfair while a snot bubble forms in his nose. Is that too far? If you're a fan of Clan Wolf, please let me know if that was too far, or just go get wrecked. Tell me more about Dancing on the Line, clan that sent Jamie Wolf to the Inner Sphere as a scout. Great work there. You join Operation Revival and then proceed to hang off the back of the wagon and drag your feet the whole time, only to become a crusader 90 years and billions of dead people later, and then take Terra anyway. Zelbruggen indeed. Friggin' wolves. So while the credit for initial development of the Direwolf goes to Clan Wolf, the first production runs of the battlemech stomped off the lines on Huntress in 3010. Where the gigantic mech was quickly added to the Smoke Jaguar Tumen. Of course, as we all know, even when Clan Wolf loses, they really win, so it's important to note that the Wolves did later win production rights in a trial against the Smoke Jaguars in 3019. Amazing how things just end up working out for Clan Wolf all the time. Held in high esteem and generally guarded by both the clans, anytime the Direwolf was seen among the Tumens of the other clans, it was either salvaged from battle or purchased in what had to be very lopsided trades. However, there were other stranger differences. Sound, after the roar of the plains of curtains abruptly diminished, except for the distant and hollow murmur of the Diabolus winds, there was nothing to hear inside the gash. In war, silence was more ominous than noise. Then came a series of resonant thumps, which Joanna's scanner showed to be Natasha Kerensky in her Direwolf, one of the heaviest of all Omnimechs. She was entering the other end of the gash, as arranged. With all this hullabaloo, one has to ask what all the squabbling was about, so let's check out the Direwolf's specs. Weighing in at 100 tons and built around a Starfire 300 XL engine, the mech is immediately out of your price range unless you're a Saudi sheik or still living off your vast Beanie Baby fortune. The designers resisted the temptation to add endosteel or ferrofibrous armor to allow for maximum flexibility in their OmniMech's internals. The 19 tons of compound 12B2 standard armor provided 304 points of protection, which matches the Atlas D's exactly, in case you're a freebirth and need that kind of reference. The Direwolf carried 15 stock double heatsinks, though more could be added in pod form if needed. This left the mech with an astonishing 50.5 tons of pod space available across 37 internal locations. This was about as close to a wide-open canvas without constraint as was possible on a battle mech. The Direwolf's primary configuration does a good job of demonstrating just how much firepower can be crammed into it. Starting with the longest range, 4 ER large lasers were split evenly between the arms for a potential 40 damage each turn, and thanks to the additional 7 heatsinks, the Direwolf can fire all of them and only end up +4 into the red. Backing them up at just a slightly shorter range were a pair of Ultra AC-5s split between the arms, each fed by a single ton of ammunition. An LRM-10 was added to the left torso to provide all ranges scattershot support, and finally at mid and close range, 4 medium pulse lasers were split between the arms. While the primary configuration is a good demonstration of a generalist design, the placement of almost all of the weaponry in the arms puts a few eggs in just 2 baskets. Losing one arm roughly halves the mech's offensive power, even with the built-in case protecting the side torsos from the UAC-5 ammunition explosions. The 22 heatsinks were also inadequate unless the Mechwarrior was very conservative with those ER large laser shots. While I would be a fool if I said the Direwolf Prime wasn't powerful, it doesn't wow me as much as a few of the other standard configurations. All by itself, in a transport cubicle that seemed too small to contain its 100-ton bulk, stood Morgan's Daishi. The Japanese word meaning Great Death had supposedly been given to that particular mech type by a member of the Yakuza, the criminal underground operating in the largely Japanese Draconis Combine. Though it was later learned the clan designers had christened the design Direwolf, the name Daishi stuck. It became the standard reporting name all across the Inner Sphere. Whatever you called it, the machine was one of the largest and most powerful clan Omnimechs. This one had been captured during the clan invasion. Morgan, through long hard practice, had learned to pilot the enemy-built mech as well as he could any Inner Sphere design. Deployed extensively among the tumens of the Smoke Jaguars and Clan Wolf, the Direwolf ran roughshod, waddled roughshod over most battle mechs thrown into their way. While it weighed the same as an Atlas and had comparable defensive strength, the advantages of clan weaponry and cooling capacity led to many fallen Inner Sphere assault mechs. As mentioned in the previous quote, the name Daishi became the default Inner Sphere designation for the mech as the identification systems in Inner Sphere battle mechs struggled to ID it with info on hand. The ABRF false reads for the Direwolf included the Stalker, the Marauder, and the King Crab. Of those, only the King Crab approached the level of impact that the Direwolf had on the battlefield. Particularly among the Free Rasselhog Republic and the Draconis Combine, the Direwolf was a menace. At the Battle of Luthien, Galaxy Commander Dorian Worth led the 31st Smoke Jaguar Assault Galaxy from the cockpit of his Direwolf, and from what Combine intel was able to gather, he was a savvy and aggressive warrior. After severely underestimating the resolve of the Combine with their mercenary support, almost 40% of the Bid Clan Smoke Jaguar and Clan Novacat forces were obliterated in the Crucible of Luthien. Galaxy Commander Dorian Worth was included in those killed in action. To Worth's credit, he took issue with some of the limiting elements of the invasion plan that he felt would grant the defending Combine forces too much control over the battlefield. His concerns proved to be quite accurate as the Jaguars and Novacats were drawn into countless ambushes and kill boxes. I am Natasha Kerensky. My word is, truth to tell, Natasha Kerensky, your word may indeed be trustworthy. I suspect it is. But the essential piece of news I have for you is that nobody dictates the rules to me. I do not do what my enemy says is right. I do what I say is right. You are independent, then? I am Jade Falcon. Joanna did not wait for further words from Natasha. Instead, she triggered an SRM salvo at the rock formation on the gash wall above the Direwolf. course, the most famous, or infamous, direwolf pilot may have to be Natasha Kerensky. Though she made a name for herself within the Wolf's Dragoons, in a modified Warhammer, and a few other mechs along the way, later in life she adopted a direwolf named Widowmaker. Kerensky split the mech's loadout into a series of powerful weapon groups, including 2 ERPPCs, 2 large pulse lasers, and an Ultra AC-20 autocannon for close-up conflict resolution. Additionally, 2 ER medium lasers were added along with the much-needed emotional support ER small laser. This proves once and for all that even the fearsome Black Widow wants to feel warm and cozy from time to time. The Widowmaker's 25 double heat sinks are crammed into every nook and cranny of the mech, and allows consistent firing for both ERPPCs and both large pulse lasers. It was a nasty build and one that served her well. However, Natasha Kerensky's near invulnerability was eventually challenged when she found herself blocked by a plucky Jade Falcon Star Commander named Joanna, who refused to back down on Twycross in 3057. Even though Joanna's summoner was outweighed by 30 tons and their chosen battlefield prevented her from using the mech's comparative speed as an advantage, she fought tenaciously. After a long and brutal fight, both the summoner and Natasha's direwolf config A were left nearly destroyed. With Joanna's summoner on its back and without any functioning weapons, the 2 mech warriors traded a few last words. When Natasha leaned the direwolf forward to grant Joanna a clean death, the Jade Falcon mech warrior, too angry to die, lifted the summoner's leg and triggered her jump jets. It bathed the head of the direwolf in fire, rendering it into blackened slag. Then, when she saw Joanna manipulate the mech leg and destroy Natasha Kerensky, for a moment she was not able to comprehend what had happened. When the direwolf settled next to the summoner, she knew the battle was over. Joanna's all right. She has to be. Joanna cannot die, ever. If the primary configuration of the direwolf doesn't fit your needs, we have plenty of other official options. The configuration A was keyed in for more mid and short-range brawling, even though it did feature a Gauss rifle in the mech's left arm along with 3 tons of ammunition. The bulk of the work was done with a trio of large pulse lasers all placed into the right arm, though at close range 2 Streak SRM-6s could be brought into play. Finally, an anti-missile system was added to the right torso to further bolster the mech's defense. The Config A's 21 double heat sinks are more than adequate for keeping the mech running and gunning without issue. There's no waiting out this direwolf, as it can keep firing those large pulse lasers without pause. Moving on to the last of the official 3010 configurations, the Direwolf B is a uniquely long-range focused build. The twin ERPPCs in the left arm aren't a surprise, but the addition of 4 Ultra AC-2s split between the side torsos along with the LB-10X autocannon spells doom for any aerospace assets in the area. In case something does get close, 2 medium pulse lasers were added to the left arm, and once again that ER small laser makes an appearance in the configuration. Gotta love it nestled in the center torso just in case. The Configuration B's 15 double heat sinks are adequate, though if both ERPPCs are fired while on the run, you're looking at +2 into the red compounding each turn. Adding in the UAC-2s and the 1s start to pile up. While the damage potential for the Direwolf B remains high, from the tabletop perspective the 4 Ultra AC-2s make me tired just thinking about all the rolling for very little damage. It's not a bad configuration, but just not one I would ever take into battle. Leaping down the line to 3049, the Configuration W Direwolf had a little bit of everything, and it must have been a nightmare for the techs to sort out the logistics for ammunition. Starting with the Gauss rifle in the left arm, fed by 4 tons of ammunition, the W configuration can keep firing for much longer than most other battle mechs. The ER large laser in the right arm offered good additional fire out to even beyond the range of the Gauss rifle. The third long-range weapon was an LRM-20 added to the left torso with 2 tons of its own ammunition. At closer ranges, 2 medium pulse lasers in the center torso could be brought to bear and add humiliation to misery. An Ultra AC-20 also sits in the right torso, fed by 2 tons of ammunition. Finally, an ER small laser was placed in the head location. All of this was cooled by 20 double heat sinks, which is way more than necessary to keep the mech going in a fight. The one of everything build really kind of irks me from a player perspective, and I suspect it would also slow down a battle consistently unless you've managed to memorize the ranges for every single weapon and don't have to glance at the page. It's oversynced and too ammo dependent. The conclusion, I'm just not a fan of the Config W. Our next official configuration arrives on the scene in 3050, and this one reflects a more focused mission statement. That being, making closing on this battle mech as horrifically painful as possible. The only equivalent of a long-range weapon that the S configuration carried was a large pulse laser. From there, it's all short-range weaponry, including 5 medium pulse lasers split between the side torsos and head. 2 Streak SRM-4s add additional scattershot damage, and even 2 machine guns are there to clear out infantry and other light unarmored vehicles. Finally, an LB-20X was nestled into the right arm, fed by 4 tons of ammunition. The configuration's 20 double heat sinks were adequate across the range brackets, though it could get warm if alpha striking. While definitely more of a niche build, the Config S has a clearly defined role which benefits it in my eyes. That being said, when you have a movement profile of 350 and are built for short-range combat, you need to be sneaky to avoid incoming fire for as long as possible while you close that distance on your prey. If you really enjoy close-range brawling, the Dire Wolf Configuration S is a solid pick. Our next configuration is a custom one-of, fielded by Hohiro Kurita, who was gifted the recently produced Direwolf by Jamie Wolf. His Dragoons had just set up a production line for the mech on Outreach, marking the first time that the 100-ton beast was produced in the Inner Sphere. Following the defeat of the Smoke Jaguars and Nova Cats on Luthien, Hohiro named the Direwolf Gutterfunken, which translates to Divine Spark. The configuration reflected Hohiro's measured and restrained sensibilities, giving up temptations like the Ultra AC-20 in favor of a Gauss rifle in the right arm and an ERPPC in the left. It feels a little silly talking about 2 15-point damage weapons as restrained, but that's what the source says. Those 2 weapons were backed up by a trio of large pulse lasers in the left torso, a Streak SRM-6 in the right torso, and that oh-so-adorable ER small laser in the head. With 23 double heat sinks, the Hohiro configuration could fire all 3 large pulse lasers, the ERPPC, and the Gauss rifle while on the run, and only end up at +2 heat. That's not too shabby. This is a powerful configuration, and it served Hohiro Kurita well against the enemies of the Combine. Since we've covered a couple of custom variants, we should probably just keep going and discuss the Prometheus, which was the other Direwolf gifted by Jamie Wolf. This time it was for Victor Steiner Davion, the man of many titles and tribulations during the fight against the clans, as well as dealing with Catherine Steiner Davion, who is about as easy to like as a bag of angry hornets. Just in time for the FedCom Civil War, Victor outfitted the Direwolf in the following configuration. The main long-distance punch relied upon a pair of 2 Series 6B ER large lasers, followed shortly after in range by a trio of Delta Series large pulse lasers. At close range, the Devastator Ultra AC-20 autocannon could be brought into play, along with a Mark 22 Type 3 SRM-6 launcher. It was a decent mix of weapons to be effective at all ranges, and the 23 double heat sinks the configuration carried could handle 4 out of the 5 lasers without building residual heat. In early 3067, Victor arrived in the new Avalon system with the intent of retaking the capital world of the Federated Suns, as well as finally putting an end to his sister's mad ambitions. Following a brutal fight within Avalon City where both sides of the dirty civil war faced high casualties, Victor marched on the remnants of Catherine's defenders. She finally surrendered on April 20th, 3067, once it became obvious there was no hope for a last-minute miracle. Swallowing dryly at that glimpse of death, Victor dug in and wrenched his controls to drop the Daishi's targeting reticule over Adam's Thunderhawk. The crosshairs burning a welcome gold, he tied everything at his command into a single salvo and cut loose. PPCs flashed out their man-made lightning, blasting away armor into tiny shards and splashes of molten fire. His 30mm autocannon pockmarked the Hawk's chest and legs, and one lucky brace of slugs rang off the assault machine's head. That would give Adam something to think about as he fell back again, though not far, never far. In 3054, we saw some new technology on our friend the Direwolf with a configuration C. While it did carry a couple of tried and true ERPPCs split between the arms and the 4 medium pulse lasers were also found in the side torsos, it also incorporated a targeting computer in the right torso and 2 advanced tactical missile 6 launchers as well. A one-shot Streak SRM-4 was placed into the head, which was a bit odd, but it is what it is. And finally, an ECM suite makes the C configuration our Operation Sneaky Sneak assault mech. However, my favorite aspect of the config C was the fact that they crammed 3 jump jets onto it, shifting the movement profile up to a 353. I thoroughly approve of jumping 100-ton battle mechs, so this automatically you're on the right path here. Unfortunately, the singleton ammo source for each ATM launcher limits the flexibility of that technology. The mech's 23 double heat sinks are more than adequate to keep the mech running cool in all but the most alpha strikey situations. The -3 on the medium pulse lasers due to the targeting computer make them incredibly dangerous to light and medium mechs that wander too close or for finishing off targets softened up with those 2 ERPPCs. Overall, Configuration C improves the Direwolf's agility significantly while offering some great goodies to bring down enemies. It's a fun option, and if a Mechwarrior in the 31st century should consider anything, it's how much fun they're going to have on the battlefield. Otherwise, why even bother? Trotting down to 3059, the Direwolf H configuration is one of the few examples of heavy lasers that I think actually work well on the BattleMech. The H config features 2 large heavy lasers split between the arms, which offers 16 damage out to 15 hexes, at the cost of 18 heat apiece. The 20 included heat sinks can handle that heat generated while even on the run, and with just enough left over for the 2 Gauss rifles, which shared the remaining arm internal locations. For those keeping track at home, that's 2 weapons that do 16 damage, and 2 more that do 15 for a total of 62 possible damage in 4 chunks. Considering the targeting computer installed into the right torso, each of those shots is all the deadlier. At close range, a medium pulse laser installed into the right torso added an additional 7 damage, and a toasty warm flamer placed into the head made for fun summer cookouts of infantry. The H configuration is a monster. If you can get away with fielding it out on the tabletop without losing your friends, I'd recommend it. We're going to skip over the Direwolf X because it is an absolute mess of a configuration with an even worse demonstration of the give it one of everything principle, which drives me batty when I see it on an Omnimech. Life is hard enough, why actively make it more difficult? There's no way a savvy Mechwarrior would be able to realistically wrangle all those weapon types. Just look at this thing, sheesh. Okay, moving on. In 3069, the Direwolf D configuration implemented the new Hyper Assault Gauss technology by installing not 1, but 2 HAG-40s split between the arms. The possible 80 damage of clustered hits is terrifying for all but the heaviest of battlemechs. Each of the rifles was fed with 5 tons of ammunition, which meant 15 shots from each to absolutely ruin someone's day. Backing up the HAG-40s at short range were 2 medium pulse lasers nestled in the center torso, a Streak SRM-6 in the left torso, and a cherished ER small laser located in the head. The mech's 15 double heat sinks kept the mech running ice cold in all but the full Alpha Strike scenario. Overall, the D configuration is a powerful mech, but one that really would need to work in conjunction with others so that the HAGs aren't just sandpapering mechs without getting into their soft internal bits. Our next to last official configuration is the E, and it was first introduced in 3103. Primarily a mid and short range brawler, this Direwolf featured 8 medium pulse lasers split between the arms as well as 2 LB-10X autocannons. There was also a Streak LRM-10 added, which provided at least a nominal long range weapon, but it's still a Streak LRM-10, so it's not really intended to scare anyone. The last new addition was a Watchdog CEWS system, which, if you're not familiar, is a combination of a light active probe and an ECM. The 17 double heat sinks were just enough to handle the 8 medium pulse lasers fired while on the run, but adding the 2 LB-10Xs or the Streak LRM-10 will push the mech into the red. Overall, the E configuration is solid as a close-range brawler, though some might take issue with the lack of a serious big weapon that could do more than 7 damage. The last official configuration is the most recent, first showing up on the battlefield in 3142. The Direwolf T config carries a more modest pair of HAG-20s to make room for a collection of mid and short-range weapons like a Streak LRM-10, 4 medium pulse lasers, and 4 ER medium lasers. All but the Streak LRM-10 were placed into the arms, leaving the side torsos for heat sinks and HAG ammunition. Also, a light active probe was added for scouting duties, I guess? Is the Wolf Empire Direwolf Scouting Star a meme yet? Maybe it should be, maybe not. One of the biggest selling features for the T configuration might be the supercharger installed into the left torso, which added a little oomph to the mech's movement profile. Now before you get your hopes up, that's still just a 6 at top speed, but it's something, I suppose. If you're a fan of the HAG-20s and enjoy a close-range brawl, the T configuration is a fine if somewhat lackluster choice. For a totally unofficial and non-canon Mech Frog configuration, I felt it was important to try again with the addition of 3 jump jets. This pushed the movement profile to 353 and set the tone for an agile yet accurate hunter. In the left arm, I tucked in 3 large pulse lasers along with an actuator enhancement system to further improve their aim. In the right arm, a plasma cannon fed by 2 tons of ammunition can be useful for clearing out infantry, battle armor, or pump up the heat of battle mech targets that wander too close. Continued support can be found in the right torso with an advanced tactical missile 12 system along with 3 tons of ammunition, protected by Case 2. While the standard distribution of ammunition types would have only 5 shots apiece, it is 15 total no matter how you slice them up, which is plenty for most encounters. Finally, because it's important, a small pulse laser was installed into the open head critical location. With 22 double heat sinks, the Direwolf MF can wick away all of the heat generated by the 3 large pulse lasers and the ATM-12 while at a run while staying heat neutral. Adding in the plasma cannon or small pulse laser will complicate things, but tough choices sometimes have to be made. Overall, I think the Direwolf 1 MF would be fun to play and represent a significant challenge that fits the mech's reputation as a dominator of the battlefield. If you are interested in trying it out, I've included the record sheet for it in the video notes below. So why do we love the Direwolf? Well, some may like it for the connection to the lore and several major players along the timeline fielding it, while others just like the idea of piloting the biggest and most dangerous mech on the field. Personally, I enjoy the fact that it was stolen from the wolves, even if just temporarily. Sometimes we have to take a win where we can get one. Of all the big stompy mechs, the Direwolf is the biggest and the stompiest. Even if you don't like it, you do have to be wary of it. Thank you as always for coming by as we talked some BattleTech. If you enjoyed the video and feel it was worthy, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and even hitting subscribe so you'll see more of my nonsense in the future. To those of you who have already taken that extra step of becoming channel members or supported on Ko-fi, thank you. Without it, none of this would be possible. Until we meet again, please take care of yourself and your loved ones by making this world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.